Hey ratbags, it's Jade. Welcome to a special video today taking a look at the story of Grounded and also what it really means to see the inside of the house. I kind of rushed past this to see all the other stuff that we'd kind of glimpsed in the official release date reveal trailer of the 1.0 that's coming in September, of course. And we see the mosquito going through pretty quickly and rapidly. And it was a bit of a surprise because we've been told for ages and ages that we wouldn't be venturing inside the house. So is that still the case? Will we have any adventures inside the home? Is there reason for us to really go in there, and what could we find? And then basically just going over the theory crafting at the moment of where we are at with the story. Who are the skeletons that we find around, and where are the other teenagers that have disappeared? Could they be the one and the same? So let's go over though the beginning of the trailer. It clearly shows inside, and this was a surprise because the devs have stated a bunch of times that we wouldn't be going inside the house. In fact, a couple Q&As earlier on this year and last year, they did mention this repeatedly, that yeah, we don't look like we're going to be going into the house in the near future. While it was a great idea, it was just something that we wouldn't expect to see before 1.0. Now, does that mean we'll ever not go in a house? Maybe, but there could be opportunity. We know that Grounded and Adam Brennicky, the game's director, has stated that he's going to carry on working on the game and adding more content after its 1.0 release. And this is what a lot of people are relying on. We do get to see a whole bunch of little Easter eggs showcasing stuff we find in our yard, like Billy Hog's surprise and some of the commercials for the juices. But that's the biggest part, is missing teenagers. Now, unless I've forgotten some or missed some out, there's at least 4 different remains of teenagers, or human skeletons at least, in the yard already. The one in the flower bed near the franking line, and then of course we've got the human remains where you get all the bee armour inside the red anthill. And most famous of all, and I know they took inspiration from the forest, as the devs directly told me, is this cave as well. Now this has actually got 2 sets of remains in it. We've got the ones on the wall missing a skull, and then we've got this set here. So that adds up to 4 human remains, 4 skeletons. Like I said, if there's any more in the yard that I've forgotten about, do let me know. Of course, the whole premise is that Wendell Tully is a failed scientist working for Ominant Technologies, and it looks like he's had just too many failures. They've pretty much cast him off or cut him aside if you listen to some of the audio logs that we've seen, but many of them have now been changed or altered. Disgruntled that he's not been recognised for his brilliance and a jealousy of another long-standing rival, he pretty much decides to start working on his own stuff, and he gets paranoid that Ominant are maybe watching him. Now, there used to be a lot more references to the Watcher, and it was a big part of the actual story trailer when Grounded released, that someone is watching, and it was always labelled as Ominant. Back in the day, there used to be a specific note that spoke about the Watcher, and it was almost like an extra quest line that we were kind of following, that it knows. And I feel like that content has been dropped a lot from the game. We've seen it cut out more and more, and obviously the laboratory with that original note, when it used to be there, has now been removed completely. So going back to the original story about people missing, are the people missing actually directly related to Wendell? We do know he's got 2 kids, 4 and Sarah, and his wife is called Trudy. But then who is the 4th mystery skeleton? Could it be Wendell himself? Could he and his whole family have perished and we won't actually come across him at all? And we know the popular fan theory is that, yep, it's Burgle is the ultimate evil bad guy and maybe he's behind everything. Now, I'm really shortening that story. There's a lot more to it in regards to specifics, but just to keep this video nice and brief. It does appear his wife left him, hence why she chucks her ring into the pond. Burgle is ultimately fired from Ominant because we find a pink slip inside the rubbish. And yeah, it does leave the question whether or not it is his family and maybe one other person, possibly some enforcer from Ominant Technologies who came to maybe reclaim some of their equipment and he decided to shrink them by accident or on purpose alongside his family. But given the trailer does say more missing teenagers, I think it's safe to assume now that these aren't Wendell's family members, and it's not going to be that dark. They're going to be moved on. Although let's face it, it's still pretty dark having the teenagers just dying in the backyard. To my mind, it is very odd that we have even more teenagers being shrunk. What reason would they be exploring this backyard to accidentally get shrunk? The original story trailer does state that you have been shrunk by accident and you shouldn't be here. Is every few weeks some kids just come and explore in the crazy scientist yards and accidentally shrinking themselves? Although the last thing to think about is maybe the report does refer to the teenagers as being actual Wendell's kids. Maybe they didn't go with their mum when she left him, maybe she didn't even get a chance to leave him, and so that's what it refers to, that their kids explicitly have been missing. And then I guess the next thing to ask is whether or not this is Wendell. Has Wendell been transformed, or is this simply part of his experiments that have mutated on their own? I think I've clarified before now that these are definitely part of his experiments, and they are obviously the same creatures that you kind of see on the D&D board, more or less. The only real difference is that we're seeing the whitey tighties here, and the creatures on the D&D board have just skirts. But the flesh is exactly the same as the Brussels sprouts that we find, or the mussel sprouts inside the koi pond. Does the experiments on mushrooms have to play, as that originally was meant to be a mushroom parmesan and it got out of control from the undershed laboratory, this has all been mentioned in the past, and then that spread into the infected, or rather it spread into the haze fungus, and then that has mutated creatures around it. Order of preference how things go, it looks like the undershed laboratory is one of the earlier experiments, as that unleashes the haze, then he maybe tries weed killer to get rid of them all, then he moves on to the pond, and that's when he starts working on the mussel sprouts. This is actually called the Hams test, and this experiment leads to Wendell basically trying to get Mouthtown, the guys that pretty much make all the food, you notice it on all the packaging around the yard, they're the big makers of food in the grounded world. They basically want to turn it into some sort of cereal, and Wendell refuses, insulted that it's only going to be made for such a basic staple. So I'm not sure I've cleared too much up there, but that's the kind of theories that are going around at the moment if you follow the story. And lots has been cut and changed, a lot of the audio logs have been redone, and actually a lot of the audio logs, even when you try spawning them in, will no longer work correctly. So you can still find the ones out in the world, but yeah, there's a lot that just simply isn't there. So they have revamped the story quite a bit. So back to the original point, is it possible we're going to be inside the yard? I've never really wanted to explore. I felt that would make it a little bit too like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and I didn't really want it to be just a case of miniatures, almost like Toy Story, running around on building blocks like A, B, C, or messing around with toys. But some of you guys were really excited about the idea that there's a wide variety of creatures and bugs that you could find indoors, and it'd be pretty interesting. The problem is, once you start bringing in bigger real world elements and you're not just in the backyard, it makes everything just seem a little bit off. And I've noticed this in other games where you're kind of small or tiny. Effectively, there's not much going on in a house. You've got a carpet, you've got these big pieces of furniture, but what really are you going to have in terms of really good growth, like sort of different biomes? It's just going to be different carpets, redwood flooring, or planks of wood going for miles and miles and miles with nothing really that interesting. Otherwise, yes, there will be TV units to climb and bookshelves, but how interesting are they? We've seen how kind of boring it does get on the decks and the porch area. You can add a few little bits like jumping jacks, but yeah, I just struggle to see how all of that would make a compelling experience inside. But maybe it's the thing the devs have been kind of teasing. They mentioned it in their second interview after the reveal trailer a couple days later, that there is something we have not seen, we haven't got a clue about. So maybe the devs have been misdirecting after all. For a long time they never really said too much about inside, they just said it was a good idea, but definitely in the last few Q&As they did, they have mentioned explicitly that they don't think they're going to be going in, but that was a good few months ago. I think at this late stage, seeing that trailer, it does kind of signify that inside will be in some way, shape or form important, but I still think it's going to be just a cutscene. The inside of the home does look fairly normal, and we can only assume that Wendell kept most of his science experiments outside the house, because Trudy, his wife, was like, no, you're not bringing that crap inside here. And that's the other thing, what reason would we have to really explore the inside then? Sure, maybe we could find some more clues about the kids, about family life, but it does seem like that is all really there in the yard, or that story is going to be complete in the yard. I think the trailer's focus is on just giving us a little bit of a pre-story about the teens being missing, and then to lead us to the world where we're going to spend the vast majority of the game exploring and surviving in the backyard. There's just no real reason to be going indoors, and it just kind of definitely looks more like a made up trailer with lots of these assets not looking the same kind of polish or as real as some of the other stuff we see in only a few seconds. So I guess I'm being a party pooper. Don't get too excited about inside. In my opinion, I don't think we're going to explore. I think the story has it that yes, the family got annoyed. Maybe they went to stay with other family. Wendell does seem extremely sad at times. It does feel like maybe he has experienced some major loss. But it does leave the question, who is the fourth set of bones? And I guess who is the fifth character space? That is another thing that you guys bring up all the time. I'm still saying that's Wendell. I don't think we're going to get an extra fifth character added in last minute. These are our heroes. Ultimately, we need to make ourselves bigger. We need to collect the raw science, and apparently once we've got enough raw science, that will be enough to kickstart the spacer machine. The machine that shrunk us, but the machine that will also make us bigger. We know we need the embiggen recipe, whatever that is, and we know it's made out of core components from the 3 major areas where we go and get some of the super chips, with 2 mystery ingredients left to get. I love all this stuff. I think near the release I will do a complete breakdown of every single story part of the game for people that really want to catch up and know everything there is, but make sure it's relevant and it's the stuff that's in the game, not cut content. So we'll leave it till the last possible moment. It might even be full release before I really start taking a look at more deeper dives into every part of the story. Let me know if you found this useful. Any talking points, leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll see you rat bags later.